Hey y'all, this is John Trent from Bounty and Comics, and I've got some Star Wars news for you today, straight out of the mouth of director J.J. Abrams. Abrams, who was the director of The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker, recently sat down to discuss the third film in the Disney trilogy. But before we get to Abrams' comments, I'd like to ask if you could please hit the subscribe button so we can continue to make these videos. Your support allows us to keep going, as we do not have a corporate backer. And we don't plan to have one anytime soon. And while you're at it, hit that like button and share this video with your friends. Thank you, and we really do appreciate your support. So let's get back to Abrams' comments. He spoke with Entertainment Weekly and revealed that one of his biggest fears are endings. And he said, endings are the thing that scare me the most. So that's just a little tidbit on Abrams. But let's get into the meat of what he really had to say here. So he would go on to address what he hopes to accomplish with this final film in the trilogy and what Disney is describing as the final film in the Skywalker saga. So this is what Abrams said, quote, "This is about bringing this thing to a close in a way that is emotional and meaningful and also satisfying in terms of actually answering as many questions as possible." He added, "So if years from now someone's watching these movies, all 9 of them, they're watching a story that is as cohesive as possible." So I've got to praise JJ for these words. He's saying the right things here. He wants to answer the questions that were set up in The Force Awakens and weren't addressed in The Last Jedi. However, I think he's also missing something really important here. It should also be more than just answering questions and creating a cohesive story. I want to create memorable characters that will be remembered and enjoyed for years. Create iconic moments. Who is going to forget Han blasting Vader in A New Hope, sending his TIE fighter spinning off into space? Obi-Wan reacting to the destruction of Alderaan. Leia blasting into the garbage chute. Luke training on Dagobah. Those things are memorable. Luke going into the cave on Dagobah. Luke finding out that Vader is his father. Those things are going to stay with you. Those things have stayed with me for years. Where are those moments in the sequel trilogy? The sequel movies have been forgettable. So far, aside from Luke drinking some nasty alien juice, something wish I could unsee, it's like the only thing I can remember that stands out. What else stands out? In fact, Mark Hamill couldn't even remember what Daisy Ridley's character's name was during a Star Wars Celebration panel back in 2016. He couldn't remember. He couldn't remember her name was Rey because they're forgettable. The only thing I could say that is memorable aside from the nasty alien juice is from Rogue One and Vader like literally just tearing apart the rebel forces. I mean, you're not going to forget that. Or what's his name? My guy, trusting in the Force, walking out there as those Death Troopers are trying to shoot him, and he trusts in the Force, and he gets it done. So let's get back to what Abrams had to say here. Despite Disney calling the film the end of the Skywalker saga, and Abrams noting he wants it to be a cohesive ending, he does detail the film could present opportunities for spin-offs. Yeah. So here's what he had to say. Quote, "While there were many things that were planned for and discussed, George Lucas himself said when he created this, he saw it as three-act plays. That doesn't mean there isn't discovery. That doesn't mean there aren't things that come up that make you realize, oh, here's an opportunity." So let me say that again. That doesn't mean there isn't discovery. That doesn't mean there aren't things that come up that make you realize, oh, here's an opportunity. I'm so confused here. I thought this was the end of the Skywalker saga. That's what all the marketing is telling me. And what happened to the cohesive ending you just talked about? Are you telling me, JJ, we might see spin-offs of some of these characters? Now, I'd be lying if I said I was surprised. It doesn't surprise me a lick that Disney would be looking to see if there's anything fans attached to that they could spin off into possible Disney Plus shows or maybe even new animated shows. We know they're introducing new characters with Kerry Russell's Bounty Hunter, Zori Bliss, and Naomi Aki's Jannah. There's also Allegiant General Pride of the First Order, played by Richard E. Grant. So we have a number of new characters where they could possibly explore their origins, explore their adventures afterwards if they survive the film. So there's a lot of stuff that they could do. And it's not unheard of for Disney to do this. Lucas did this himself with the animated series Star Wars The Clone Wars. He introduced us to Ahsoka Tano in the animated feature film, and then would explore her further in the animated series. And then in that animated series, we also got to look more about Anakin Skywalker, his turn to the dark side, his adventures with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then we also got to see Darth Maul's story. They also introduced us to the Night Sisters, introduced us to a lot of the bounty hunters, Cad Bane. We really got to get to know the 501st Division with Captain Rex and Fives, and really explore the Force and how it works with Yoda. So there's definitely, obviously, possibilities. So I'm not saying that what he's saying is unheard of, but the fact that you're already talking about we could possibly do spin-offs because we explored something, I just focus on the story that you're having at first and let that story tell instead of already looking ahead to spin-offs. I think that's one of the major problems with Hollywood. They're always trying to franchise something instead of focusing on a singular story. And then, hey, if you get people really like it, then yeah, you can go ahead and franchise it. I think John Wick might be a good example of that. People love John Wick, and it told a good singular story, and people have continued to embrace that character, and then they've turned it into a franchise, and we've seen 2 sequels already, and they're already working on a 4th, and a spin-off film, a female-focused spin-off film already. But yeah, I'm going on a tangent here. So let's get back to Abrams. He did clarify that the film has to be an ending. So he says, quote, "It also doesn't mean that there's a list of payoffs that we have to do because of setups, but we also were very much aware this is the end of the trilogy and it needs to satisfy. We went into this thing knowing it has to be an ending. We're not screwing around," end quote. So I don't really buy the fact that they didn't have a list of payoffs. I definitely think they did. I think that you're going to see Rey's parentage is definitely on that list. I think Luke Skywalker's character is on there. I think closure for Carrie Fisher's Leia Organa is on there. I definitely think they had a list. In fact, I think Abrams even gives it away here. He says, but we were also very much aware this is the end of the trilogy and it needs to satisfy. How are you going to know it's going to satisfy if you don't have a number of criteria that would satisfy your audience, which that criteria would be a list, right? So Abrams actually elaborates on this. He told EW in a video, it's not just the end of 3 movies, it's the end of 9 movies, it's 3 trilogies. So the story needed to end emotionally, it needed to end with scale, but with intimacy. That sounds a lot like a list, and I'm sure that they have sub-lists under that, which tell you what would be emotional, what would have what's with scale, and what were the intimate moments. So yeah, I definitely think they had lists. And then, Abrams continues, it was a bit of a juggling on a tightrope act. It was really important to us that we tell a story that makes people feel, where there's a sense, if you're a kid watching all 9 movies years from now, you see this beginning, middle, and end, and it was all coming to this. This is all PR garbage. I don't think this is possible at all. This is completely impossible. There's no way that you watch beginning with the prequels, going into the original trilogy, and then going into the sequel trilogy, and you're going to be able to see what was happening, what was coming in The Last Jedi, let alone The Force Awakens. How in the world is anyone going to see the rise of Rey in The Force Awakens by watching the prequel original trilogy? She's not hinted at all. Who in their right mind is going to buy that Luke Skywalker wants to kill his nephew after watching the original trilogy? No one. No one will. I do think Abrams is right about The Rise of Skywalker being a juggling act on a tightrope. The only problem is the circus act usually makes it across the tightrope. I just don't see that happening with The Rise of Skywalker. The Last Jedi saw the juggler drop his flaming swords. The Rise of Skywalker will more than likely see him fall off the tightrope in an attempt to catch those swords. How about that for an analogy, J.J. Abrams? That's my thoughts on the matter. What do you make of Abrams' recent comments? Let me know by leaving a comment below. My name is John Trent, and you've been watching Bounding into Comics. Until next time.